Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Dizzle. It is Tuesday, June 21st, 2011. Tom Dizzlemits here as always. Today we're going to cover a few news and notes on the television side of the entertainment spectrum. Seems to be the one thing that we usually don't do too great of a job at keeping up on, only because in today's DVR and 3-day look-back world, you don't have to keep up on your TV shows on a weekly basis. You can DVR them all and watch them all at the end of the season, which sometimes we're guilty of falling into that trap. But it's fun to keep up on the shows week to week and be, oh, what happened? Oh, I gotta wait a week. Oh, and you gotta build up the anticipation of it. So we're trying to get into that habit. We're trying to have a little bit more television coverage here. So we're gonna have some news coming out of the TV side of things. Starting up with a follow-up to yesterday's big story with the unfortunate passing of Ryan Dunn. G4 TV had recently started work on Proving Ground, a new show where they had him as a host, recreating crazy scenes from TV, movies, or anything else. Essentially like Jackass, just with a little bit more focus. It debuted in the last week. He had 8 episodes in the can before the untimely death. But wisely, G4 has decided to pull the show until they can exactly figure out what they're going to do, if they're going to air the shows at a later date once enough time has passed. It's at least a good decision to not be plastering the recently deceased face of one of your hosts all over the place to try and get more exposure for it. So now let's get into the happy TV news for the day. Anyone who's a fan of Bear Grylls will be happy to know that Man vs. Wild is coming back on July 11th. Years past, they've liked to do a thing where they get a celebrity to pop up for like the season premiere. When Land of the Lost came out years ago and bombed, Will Ferrell stopped by to join Bear Grylls in one of his outings. This year, for their season premiere, Jake Gyllenhaal is going to be joining him. That's going to be awesome. Jake Gyllenhaal, almost like the unproven action hero, since a lot of people argue, oh, people know who he is, but he just doesn't have the good, big name to sell a movie. That's why the Prince of Persia movie bombed. And to them I say, were you ever going to see a Prince of Persia movie even if they did have a big person in it? Probably not. So July 11th is your date to mark Bear Grylls and Jake Gyllenhaal going into the wild. This sounds like it might be a Brokeback Mountain sequel. Moving on to shows that have actually premiered already. Falling Skies ended up having the biggest cable network debut for a television show this year. Ended up pulling in 5.9 million viewers. The last big number ended up being 5.3 million for The Walking Dead on AMC around Halloween time. Though TNT had some shows launched last summer that had about 7 million viewers for that. So the shows aren't launching as successfully. We got to look at the other conditions. Falling Skies is an alien-based television show. It came out the week after Super 8 hit theaters. They were being advertised around the same time all over the place. So not necessarily that there's any confusion, but people are going to pick to watch either the television show or the movie. They're not going to go with it all. So, at the very least, Falling Skies is going to be around for this season, possibly even next. Speaking of shows that are returning for additional seasons, if you haven't been watching USA Network for some of their original programming, you really should be doing that at this point. 2 of their shows that are particularly strong are the back-to-back Tuesday night programming. Starts out with White Collar, about a con man who works with the FBI to help him, bust other con men. But the FBI knows that they can't really let him out of their sights because he'll just go back to being a con man and he'll run off, and then they're back to square one. The show is awesome for the guest stars that pop up on it. Normally, you'll at least have, 1 familiar face per episode. Last week's episode, though, had a whole slew of familiar faces. You have the Masterson brothers, Danny and Chris, which you might not know them offhand. But have you ever seen Malcolm in the Middle? Chris Masterson was the oldest brother, Francis. And have you ever seen that 70s show? Danny Masterson will always be known to everyone as Hyde. So it was very interesting to see them pop up playing brothers on the show. They don't usually get to actually play the brothers that they are in real life. They're usually like friends or random acquaintances on the show, and they'll have some funny, pleasant interaction. But it was good. This time they got to be brothers. They got to be pissed off at each other the whole time, and it was a big plot point that they ended up having to, get that brotherly love rekindled. Aww. But it was a very well done episode. Not only that, though, they weren't even the biggest guest stars of the episode. If anyone remembers Anna Klumsky, which she doesn't pop up a lot, but if you ever seen My Girl, you know exactly who she is. And you know that she hasn't done a lot of movies. She did like one with Christina Ricci when they were both like teenage girls. And that was about it for a while. But holy shit, she's smoking nowadays. I don't know what they did, but White Collar ended up getting her to be a guest star on it. She plays a rather important FBI agent in the episode that gives some of the good story. But it's funny, just because you watch her and some of her delivery and some of her just little quirks, it's like you're watching the little girl from My Girl on your screen, and like she hasn't aged a day, except for the fact that she's a lot hotter now. So that's always good. You know, hot girls are a good reason to go watch a TV show. And that is why, if you haven't watched Covert Affairs, there's another one to check out. Piper Perabo, Coyote Ugly Blonde chick. Yeah, she doesn't look like she's aged a day in the over 10 years since Coyote Ugly came out. As sad as it sounds, though, the hot girl isn't even the reason to watch that show. I think my absolute favorite person who pops up, besides bushy eyebrowed Peter Gallagher from the OC and from Mr. Deeds, yeah, he's hilarious. He likes to pop up maybe a minute or two per episode. But it's that, you know, every 4 or 5 episodes, Oded Fair, he likes to pop up. It's an actor's name you wouldn't recognize, but if you've seen The Mummy, and you remember the guy who rides around on the horse trying to protect, you know, the legend or whatever of the mummy cursed guy, or if you've seen the Resident Evil movies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And let me tell you, just between The Mummy and Resident Evil, he's proved just how badass he is, so you couldn't have a more perfect fit than him to be a secret agent on this show. So maybe you're one of those people who have at least heard about White Collar and Covert Affairs and have just been waiting for the right time to get into it, well, when you know it's at least a decent show and there's enough people watching that it can't suck too badly. Well, I'm telling you, now is that time. So hopefully we got you to change your TV habits for the better today. That's all the time we've got for today's Daily Dizzle. We do thank you guys for joining us as always. Tomorrow we'll be back and we'll finally get to that summer box office recap so you can know just how bad some of these big blockbuster movies like the Pirates of the Caribbean and Kung Fu Panda and them are performing on the American side of things. Doesn't mean they're not making money, just means that they're not making as much money as expected. So we'll have the full breakdown for that tomorrow. Be sure to tune in then. For the Daily Dizzle, I'm Tommy Dizzlemits. We'll see you Wednesday.